Imagine taking on one of the most complex hypercars ever built, with the manufacturer refusing to help, selling no replacement parts, and calling the project impossible. That's exactly what Matt Armstrong faced when he bought a written-off Bugatti Chiron per Sport, a car engineered so precisely that only the factory was ever meant to touch it. This is the story of how one person's determination, a calm but pointed message, and a global YouTube audience combined to challenge that idea completely. Rebuilding a Chiron per Sport is unlike almost any other automotive project. The car represents some of the most advanced engineering on the road today. A quad-turbocharged W16 engine, a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox built specifically to handle 1,500 horsepower, and an ultra-precise carbon fiber monocoque chassis. It isn't just a car, it's a tightly integrated system where every component is designed to work in concert with every other. What made this case unusual is that the car had been written off after an accident. For most high-end vehicles, a total loss opens the door to independent rebuilders, since parts can often be sourced through aftermarket suppliers or salvage yards. Bugatti's policy allows for none of that. The company sells no parts outside its authorized network, offers no technical support to outside shops, and considers the rebuild procedures too risky for anyone but factory-trained specialists to attempt. For Matt Armstrong, buying this wrecked Chiron wasn't just about fixing a car. It was a direct test of the assumption that only Bugatti could bring one back to life. At its heart, the project raised a simple but pointed question. Once a car is totaled and sold, shouldn't the new owner have the right to repair it however they choose? Bugatti's technical complexity and refusal to share parts or information stood in the way of that answer. Adding to the challenge, Bugatti's own CEO stated publicly that any real repair would require splitting the carbon fiber monocoque, something he said could only be done safely inside a handful of specialized facilities. It wasn't an empty warning. A mistake during that process could cause irreversible damage. Still, the visible damage to the car told a more nuanced story. Several components, while rare and expensive, weren't necessarily beyond repair. The real question wasn't whether the car could physically be restored, but whether it could be done without Bugatti's help at all. From the moment Matt announced the purchase, YouTube became more than a place to post videos. It became the engine driving the entire project forward. What started as one builder's ambitious repair quickly turned into one of the most talked about automotive series online. Millions of viewers tuned in to watch someone attempt what a major manufacturer had all but called impossible. Unlike traditional automotive media, which tends to arrive as polished, prepackaged content, this unfolded in real time. Viewers saw every success, every setback, and every unexpected problem as it happened, which created a level of trust that scripted coverage rarely achieves. People weren't just watching a finished restoration, they were living through the process alongside Matt. As the series gained traction, YouTube's algorithm carried it well beyond his existing audience. Mechanics, engineers, and casual viewers with no prior interest in hypercars started finding the videos through recommendations and shared clips, and the project grew from a niche automotive story into a broader conversation about ownership and repair rights. That credibility mattered. Viewers responded strongly to Matt's willingness to show mistakes and explain his reasoning rather than presenting himself as someone who already had every answer. That openness invited experts and enthusiasts to weigh in with their own knowledge, turning the series into something closer to a collaborative effort than a solo project. Many viewers connected the rebuild to a larger issue, the growing trend of manufacturers restricting access to parts, software, and repair information across the auto industry. Matt's project became a rallying point for independent mechanics and owners who believe that buying a car should include the right to fix it. And because each update reached millions of people almost immediately, Bugatti could no longer treat the project as something happening quietly in the background. Faced with a closed door, Matt had three real options: give up, accept Bugatti's terms, or find another way forward. He chose the third, but not through anger or public pressure. His first move was a calm, direct message to the company itself, laying out his intentions clearly and taking care to separate corporate policy from the individual people at Bugatti. In the message, he acknowledged that decisions at a company of that size rarely rest with one person, but made clear that he intended to proceed regardless. The tone wasn't a threat. It read more like a statement of fact from someone who had already done the homework. He understood the risks of splitting the chassis, had consulted specialists, and believed that with careful planning the work could be done safely. Posting the message publicly was itself a strategic choice. It invited scrutiny and set clear expectations for what would follow, standing in sharp contrast to Bugatti's silence on the matter. Behind the scenes, Matt was already building the tools for the job: 3D scanning, CNC machining, and a growing network of independent specialists willing to help solve problems the factory wouldn't touch. The message was less about defiance for its own sake and more a signal that the rebuild was moving forward either way. One of the most daunting steps in the entire project was separating the carbon fiber monocoque, the structural safety cell at the heart of the car. This isn't comparable to removing a body panel. Bugatti's own leadership had said that only a small number of facilities in the world had the equipment and expertise to do this safely, and that attempting it elsewhere was reckless. Matt approached it differently, methodically. Every step was planned in advance with specialists to manage the loads on the chassis correctly and safely disconnect the surrounding systems. Filmed in real time, the separation of the front and rear sections went cleanly, without damage. The significance went beyond the physical achievement. It undercut one of Bugatti's central arguments, that this kind of work simply couldn't be done outside factory walls. With the chassis split, the gearbox and powertrain were finally accessible, allowing for a real, detailed assessment of the damage rather than guesswork. The project had moved from theoretical to concrete, and the narrative around it shifted from impossible to difficult, but achievable with the right preparation. With the chassis open, attention turned to a harder problem: replacing parts that simply don't exist outside Bugatti's own supply chain. Some of these are as complex as the aluminum horseshoe, a structural, load-bearing component that connects multiple systems in the car. Rather than treat that as a dead end, Matt's team used 3D scanning to capture the exact dimensions of the damaged part, then recreated it using CNC machining, aiming not just to match the original but to refine it where possible. Other components followed a similar path. Radiators once assumed to be a total loss were sent to a UK-based cooling specialist and were successfully restored. Since Bugatti doesn't offer a replacement exhaust for the car, a fabrication specialist built a custom system tailored to match the Chiron's performance and sound characteristics. Even the wheels, which have to meet exact proprietary specifications to fit the car's hubs and brakes safely, were recreated using the same scanning process. Each of these solutions became a documented case study, publicly shared rather than kept private. Together, they built a real argument against the idea that factory parts are the only viable option and offered other independent builders a reference point for tackling similar problems. This project is about more than restoring a single Chiron. It challenges a business model that many hypercar manufacturers rely on, using technical complexity and parts exclusivity to keep total control over how their vehicles are repaired and maintained long after they leave the factory. By successfully splitting the chassis, exposing the drivetrain, and fabricating parts independently, Matt has shown that the assumption of total manufacturer control isn't as absolute as it's often presented. His detailed documentation gives other builders a real reference point, and manufacturers beyond Bugatti with similar restrictive policies are watching closely. If a car this complex can be brought back without official support, it weakens the case for rigid gatekeeping across the entire luxury car industry. For owners, the implications are practical. Hypercar ownership doesn't have to mean permanent dependence on the manufacturer's network. With modern scanning and fabrication tools, along with the right specialists, projects once considered off-limits become possible. And by documenting every step publicly, Matt has helped close an information gap that manufacturers have long relied on to maintain control. The rebuild is still far from finished, with major work remaining. But each completed step chips away at the argument that only the factory can do this kind of work. It's a slow, methodical case being built one repair at a time. In the end, this project is less about proving a single car can be fixed and more about showing that corporate control over repair, no matter how deeply built into an industry, can be challenged through patience, expertise, and transparency. Whether or not that changes how manufacturers operate, it has already changed what owners and independent builders believe is possible.